The name's Griggs, and for a little over a week now I've been stranded on an unknown planet with a utility bot named Blink. When we landed, we had nothing but my suit and a few basic tools to survive. But over the last few days, we've managed to use those tools to scrape together a means of transportation and a place to hold up for a while. I decided to keep a log of my time here, and we've been using Blink as a way to broadcast this signal out into space. According to him, there seems to be some interest in what we're doing out here. So, I figured I'd give another update. Where we're at right now, we're currently on the hunt for a way to generate power at the base. We're also looking for metal grids to repair the large container in the shed, and any additional containers we can find along the way. And of course, there's always room for something cool. Do you ever see something rusting on the side of the road and think, yeah, that's got potential? That's how I feel when I see these rusted old rigs. Not sure what it wants to be yet, but I know it can be more than it is right now. Plus, worst case scenario, we can use it for parts. Even Blink got on board with the idea once we saw the hydrogen tank in the back and the hackable batteries underneath. All I had to do was attach a piston and turn it on. Initially, the plan was to attach some wheels, but my lack of large steel tubes required a different solution. Instead of trying to drive onto the trailer, I needed to lift the car high enough to have the trailer drive underneath it. Also, knowing I'm not exactly a wizard at reversing trailers, I gave myself a greater margin of error by getting rid of some of the walls. Once the car was lowered into place, we locked everything down with a mag plate, and we were good to go. But before heading back to the base, there were a few other sites close by I wanted to check for components. There wasn't anything too exciting in the factory, just some interior plates, small tubes, and a handful of motors, but we take what we can get. I did find something real nice at the next stop, though.
Is that a container? Oh, yes. That, my friends, is a container. That is great news.
This was a huge find. For those unfamiliar with space engineering, the containers on my trailer right now are small grid, medium-sized containers, and have a capacity of, 3,000 liters?
3,375.
Right. And this new large grid, small container gives us
15,625.
So roughly 5 times more storage space, which means we can actually start stockpiling components for larger projects. This bit of information might also help explain why I'm trying to repair the large container in the shed. We made our way back to the base and carefully unloaded our new loot. I pulled the few metal grids that we did have out of our large container to repair the small one we just got, and then attached it to the corner so I could have access to it from inside and outside the shed.
And there it is. We officially have a cargo container. Oh, that feels so good to say. Alright, on the road again.
While I would have liked to stick around the base a bit longer to enjoy my new toys, Blink kindly reminded me that we are on a ticking clock with our power. If we didn't find something soon, everything we've accomplished up until this point will have been for nothing. And it's not just about the lights either. Our car is battery powered. Our survival kit is battery powered. Even my suit is battery powered. If I run out of energy during one of those sandstorms, I'd be burnt to a crisp. So needless to say, we're gonna keep searching.
Alright, looks like we got something over here. Hey! This place looks interesting. Alright, let's see what we got. Yes! Alright, what about in here? Nothing. Small tubes, steel plates, girders. None of that's super important, and we have limited cargo space. I mean, I can't not. Alright, what about in here? I guess. Alright, what else we got? A battery with its power cells. Don't mind if I do. Sweet. A battery without its power cells. I don't know. We do have another gyroscope though. That will come in handy. And we got some hydrogen tanks. Alright, well that's all she wrote for this spot.
Sir, I believe I may have located a promising power signal.
Let's check it out.
Rerouting to nearby energy signature.
Oh, yeah. That's what we needed right there. Well done, Blink. Okay, so that is a great find. Exactly what we needed. The only question is, how am I going to get that on the truck?
For my newer engineers out there, I'd figured I'd explain a bit of the process here. Getting this turbine on the truck isn't quite as simple as the car we just brought home, because this thing is large grid. Everything on the large grid is notably bigger, heavier, and requires more components than their small grid counterpart. This thing is too heavy for me to lift on my own, so I'll need to use some mechanical parts again. But I don't have the components to build a bunch of large grid pieces. So instead, what I'm doing is throwing down a large grid rotor to be used as a type converter. By switching out the large rotor head for a small grid version, I'm able to keep everything attached and build my lift like I normally would, saving myself components. Just remember to lock your rotor if you're going to do this. I don't want anyone coming at me if they forget that a rotor's main function is to, rotate.
Alright, so in theory, I just reverse this piston. Now it's locked down. And then I will come over here. And there we go. Oh, but there is a problem. I need to put a battery on this because it won't be powered by the wind turbine anymore. Fortunately, I've got just the thing right here. Alright, let's slap this guy on here. Alright, so that works. Now we'll back up the trailer. But I'm gonna need to open this up a little bit.
I started grinding away the pieces in my way before I discovered a large grid battery.
So I am now at an interesting crossroad here. Because on the one hand, I spent all that time putting all my scrap at that other base, but on the other hand, there is a full base battery here. And that would be quite difficult to get out of the ground.
I molded over and decided that the shed was still a better base for the time being. And as much as I wanted to take that battery with us, I just didn't have the means to make that possible right now. To grab something like that, I'd need a crane for sure. But as a consolation prize, I did stumble upon an upgraded welding torch and another plushie.
Hey, that's a nice find. And another plushie.
Once the decision was made, it was time to focus on loading the turbine onto the trailer. I moved the truck into position and reversed my lift pistons until I heard the mag plates lock.
Oh man, that was so smooth. Unfortunately, that's only half the battle. The other half comes in trying to get this thing home. But we'll see how this goes.
And with that, I started making my way back.
Sir, I think you may be forgetting something.
Oh, I didn't even finish looting this place. Let's go back. Oh, what do we have here? A hydrogen engine and an H2O2 generator, or O2H2 generator. Oh, dang. Yeah, that's a good find too. We'll have to find some ice to make that work, but that's awesome. Ooh, the question is, do I need the hydrogen engine? I don't think I do, so I'd rather get those large steel tubes and power cell. Yeah, but I will absolutely be taking this.
I threw the hydrogen generator on the trailer, and then we started making our way back to the base. I made sure to take things slow and steady, and eventually we made it back.
There it is. Home sweet home. So now the question is, where exactly are we going to put this thing?
I settled on the idea of branching it off the main building. But as I worked on setting up the foundation, something dawned on me.
You know, this might be a little bit more involved than I had originally anticipated. I think I'm gonna have to get some hinges to do this properly.
I slept for the night and got a jump on it in the morning. In hindsight, I probably could have done some things differently and saved myself some of the struggle you are about to witness. But for some reason, this was the best idea I could come up with at the time, and our friendly advice robot was awfully quiet during this process.
It didn't seem like you were wanting feedback on your creative solutions.
Alright, I'll be the first to admit this isn't exactly gonna be genius work, but I think we've lined it up enough that if I just, take a car and drive it into the other side of this, we might be able to get these to connect. I don't know if I'd consider that a gentle approach. But now if I mess with these hinges, I may be able to wiggle it in place. Oh man, we're so close. Alright, I think... here's what I need to do. Alright, I'm gonna lower this other hinge. I'm gonna drop this down a bit. Alright, now we'll lift it back up. Holy cow, it worked. Oh yeah, just like I planned it. Alright, now we can get rid of all this nonsense. Alright, now let's make the magic happen. Here we go. I miscalculated. Let's try this again. We did it. Oh man. I'll admit, it took a sec, but we got it.
After the tower was in place, I started working on a better way to connect it to our base. I wanted things to look a bit nicer, so I started changing the way that the wall was oriented for some additional attachment points. I added trusses that would hug either side of the tower, and then cleaned up the base, as well as all the leftover scrap. I didn't have all the components I needed to weld everything, so this would have to do for now. Next, I turned my attention to hooking up our O2H2 generator to our survival kit. Later on, this thing will be able to provide fuel to any hydrogen ships we create. But for now, it would serve as a way to fill my suit.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I was happy that our power problems were behind us for the time being, but that project left us a little slim on components. So, once again, it was trucking time. Fortunately, it didn't take us too long to find a rather large complex. So far, this is the closest thing to a town I've come across, and it seemed like a pretty good spot to find something valuable.
What do we have here? Pipes. Well, hello there. That is a large grid, small cargo container. I don't mind if I do, but it doesn't have its metal grids. That is a bummer.
I wasn't wrong about this place having something valuable. I was just hoping maybe things were a little more intact. The other factory building was nearly identical, which meant I found another cargo container in the same spot. But it was also identical in the fact that this other container also didn't have its metal grids. I managed to free the two containers, bring them over to the truck, which took the rest of the day. I slept in the truck, and the next morning I continued searching around the complex for other useful items.
Well, it's not like I really have anything I can put the power efficiency module onto, so let's just keep on looking.
Once I finished checking all the buildings, I turned my attention to the flipped over truck.
Alright. Hey. Yeah, that's what we needed. Small grid, and it doesn't require metal grids to make it. That is a good find. One of these days, I'm gonna open up a cargo container. It's just gonna have hundreds of metal grids. I just know it. The only downside to getting a large cargo container is I have to move everything else.
I won't bore you with the details too much, since all I did was carve out some space for the container and then add my other containers back on. But what I will say is that, as easy as that sounds, it took forever. Once everything was slotted back in place, I threw down some mag plates for our large grid containers. It was only a short drive to get here, but we had already managed to fill up our trailer, so once again we were headed home. I pulled the remaining grids that we had left out of that large cargo container, and I was able to repair the new containers we had found. And before Blink can say anything, yes, I know that one of my cargo containers is sideways. No, I don't care enough to change it. Now at this point, I began to ask myself, Griggs, what is the goal here? Obviously, not dying is number one, but driving around the same 15-kilometer radius every day, hoping to find more than some burnt-out wreck with barely enough scrap on it to be useful, is not what I'd consider a plan. Now that we had power and enough storage to get by for the time being, what we really needed is metal grids. As we've discussed, metal grids will let me repair that large cargo container, but they are also a crucial component for thrusters. I'm still not sure what our long-term plan is, but being able to scout wrecks before I waste my time driving to them would sure help me get in the headspace to make those plans for the future. That, and maybe a bigger trailer, since a bunch of my time is also spent running back and forth whenever I do find something.
Hey, well, on the one hand, that's a pretty good find. On the other hand, though, it just adds to my current need for metal grids. It's just added to the list.
As it stands, we're making do with what we got, and hoping we don't make too many mistakes along the way.
Oh, no. Oh, how did that even happen? Oh, no. I must have accidentally hit the deattach button. Dang. Okay, let's assess the damage. That wasn't exactly what I wanted right there.
Sir, are you familiar with the famous mathematician Archimedes?
Oh, here we go. Yeah, something lever.
Greatly misquoted, but yes. I think his lever principle might come in handy here.
You know, you're not wrong. I would have gotten there eventually, but Blink was right. The best way to lift up the front end of my trailer was to build a lever off the back. Before too long, I managed to reconnect while also learning a valuable lesson. Don't put your trailer eject button in a place where you can accidentally hit it. That's like putting a self-destruct button next to your parking brake. You're not doing yourself any favors.
Your boy needs some metal grids, man.
So far on this journey, I've learned that some days the desert likes to play ball, and some days it doesn't. I was still on the hunt for those metal grids, but so far I've come up empty-handed on every wreck I've come across.
Whole lot of nothing.
And sometimes, when things aren't going your way, you just gotta find a way to cheer yourself up.
Ooh, I think I see a crane over here. Oh, it's more like an excavator, but hey, this isn't a bad find. Alright, I'm gonna start by checking the buildings, and then I'll come back and figure out how I wanna deal with the excavator. Alright, not much in here. Ooh, yeah, man. I'll take all the motors I can get. More power cells, that's great. I'll never turn down some large steel tubes. Alright, now let's see what we got here. It's not really a question of whether or not I want it. Obviously I want it. It's just, what am I gonna use it for? I think we should just take it with us, and then we can worry about its permanent location later.
After sleeping in the cab of my truck another night, I got to work in the morning lifting our new piece of equipment the same way I did with the wind turbine.
Yep, that'll do it.
Now, I didn't realize it at the time, but this excavator actually had something pretty valuable on it that was going to come in handy real soon. But for the time being, I was just happy to switch gears from the never-ending scavenger hunt for metal grids. I did some light grinding to give us a smaller footprint to work with, then managed to throw the dog onto the trailer without too much issue.
So let's get this thing back to the base.
The process wasn't necessarily difficult, but it was time-consuming, solidifying in my mind that having a crane on my trailer might save me from having to repeat this in the future. The only problem with that, though, was that I need a much bigger trailer, and therefore a much bigger truck, if I wanted to convert this excavator into a crane that we could take with us. And you may see where this is going.
Alright, well, let's get to work on this thing. It's gonna be a whole process.
I started by pulling the truck into our garage and cut off the wheels, getting ready to replace them with much larger ones. However, at a certain point I realized,
you know what? I think in order for me to make this the proper size, I gotta do the trailer first. Alright, let's work on the trailer first then. Oh man, it kills me to do this, but I think in order to build this just behemoth of a trailer, I'm gonna have to kill my darlings.
now here's the deal. I had a lot of good intentions when I started this project. I thought to myself, wouldn't it be nice to have 2 layers? One where I could keep my cargo containers and our components, and then have the flatbed on top that would allow us to transport wrecks we find. I wanted to have another lift, like the one that we had previously, but with a button that would take us to the different levels. I wanted enough room on top that I could add the dog excavator and then turn it into a crane. I wanted all of that, and I kid you not, also a kitchen sink. I thought about having a little cabin in here that would make sleeping a bit more comfortable. Now, none of those things are impossible, or even a bad idea. But my idea brain was writing checks that our component containers couldn't cash.
This might be a little too much for the time being. I really don't have as many resources as I maybe thought I did. Come on, Griggs, get it together.
So I decided to cut back a bit, both on features and on general size. Once I settled on the new size, I got to work welding. In order to make that process a little bit less tedious, I threw some welders on a piston to help me out. Now I'll be honest, I'm not really in love with how the trailer turned out at the moment, but I imagine over time I can get it where I want it to be. I just needed to get the project good enough to work for the time being, since my component stock was really struggling, and at this point I hadn't even messed with the truck yet. Speaking of, the next part of the project was to size the truck up to match the trailer.
Well, here's the unfortunate truth of the matter. I've made that trailer outside so big that I can't possibly build this inside of here and get it out without knocking out an entire wall. So, I'm gonna have to slap some wheels back on this thing, bring it outside again, and then we'll work on it next to the trailer. Well, already you can probably see the size comparison. We're gonna have to do a lot of work to this truck to get it to pull that trailer.
I did some measurements and first worked on widening everything. While this was definitely going to be a major overhaul, I still wanted the truck to have the same relative look and feel, just bigger, stronger, and better in every way. Kinda like the guy she tells you not to worry about. I tinkered around with the dimensions for a while before I landed on something that I thought looked decent. I just couldn't figure out exactly what I wanted to do with that front center section, until I asked myself, how exactly am I supposed to get into this monster truck? At that point, the solution seemed pretty simple, so I added a door and a ramp to get us up to the driver's seat. At this point, all that was left to do was to connect the trailer to the truck. I would have liked to have built a more sophisticated joint like the one that we had previously, but like I mentioned earlier, I was out of resources. I barely had enough to weld up the wheels as is.
Dude, come on. Why? Just connect. Oh, why? Must everything always be difficult?
Remember earlier when I said that sometimes the desert doesn't like to play ball? Well, today was another one of those days. I have Blink cut down a lot of the footage from these logs so you don't have to see the great many hours we spend driving around looking at nothing but sand. Every once in a while, Blink will pick up a signal and we'll drive there hoping that it's a large complex like the ones that we found a few days ago.
Finally! Holy cow!
But more often than not, especially recently, we end up finding things like this.
You kidding me? I've been driving for hours, and this is what the desert has to offer? Oh, man.
Now, at this point, any amount of components is a boon to our operation. But if it takes almost a full day of driving for me to end up with this, I can't really say that's time well spent. Not to mention the amount of time that it takes to individually grind each piece of armor. So rather than do that, I tried to think of a more creative solution.
You know what I should really do? I should just slap some grinders on the front of this, so that way I don't have to get out for little things like this.
Now I'm gonna breeze past this part because this design is not one that's sticking around. I like the idea of having these grinders off the front, but in order for this contraption to be viable long term, it's gonna need some major reworking. Once I was done with this spot, I continued our journey looking for literally anything valuable. But, unfortunately...
Oh, are you kidding me? Why? It's just been a rough day for scrapping, boys. Alright, here's the deal. I can't keep justifying driving that big old truck out there every time I see a little signal that Blink sends me. I gotta be smarter about this, otherwise it's gonna take me a zillion years to accomplish anything. I think we are at the point where I need a scout that can fly. Let's take a gander at what we have available to us.
Now you may be wondering, Griggs, if you could have built a scout this whole time, why didn't you do it earlier? And the answer to that is because what I'm about to build is not exactly safe or sustainable. You see, I don't have enough thrusters to cover all the directions. In fact, I just recently got the thruster I needed to make this thing work from that excavator. Most spacecrafts nowadays have thrust facing all 6 directions: up, down, left, right, forward, and backward. What I'm about to slap together will cover only 2. What that means is I'll have a very thin margin of error when trying to take off or land. If I'm not oriented nearly perfectly straight up and down, that downward-facing thruster can send me careening off course and potentially straight into the ground if I'm not careful. Beyond the obvious bodily harm that would cause, another major concern is that if I do crash and survive, I'll be stranded somewhere in the desert with no way of getting back. And if all of that wasn't enough, I'm pulling nearly every metal grid that I currently own out of all of the containers that we've gotten so far to make these thrusters work. Eggs, meet my singular basket.
I should have built this outside. I think that I could very easily screw up trying to get out. You know what? Let's try it. Alright, let's see if this scout vessel can work. Oh, it is working.
It's a hack job for sure. It's putting everything that I currently have on the line. But man, it beats the hell out of driving. Thanks for tuning in to Mine and Blink's broadcast. Hopefully you'll hear from us again. But until then, keep on scrapping.